Hello and welcome to another episode of Gaming at the Round Table with Crystal, Maverick, and myself, Jojo. Brought to you by Owl Knights Studio. I can't talk right now, but Owl Knights Media. Here we go. Today we're going to be talking about gaming and social networks, kind of how gaming has essentially taken over for certain social networks and become a social network in and of itself.
Hmm.
Anybody want to take off and run with it, or we're going to segue one way or the other?
So I'll start from the beginning. Back in my day,
Oh boy.
social networks didn't exist, but games did. And games weren't all that socially acceptable. We've talked about that kind of thing. However, games really early on, and honestly, in my opinion, games have almost always been about the social aspect. Yes, there are many excellent single player games, but think back to even childhood. I don't care what age bracket you are, if you played a game or games during your childhood, those memories are going to involve other people. Even single player games, you would hand the controller to your sibling or your best friend who came over, or you went over to their house because you pull, like whatever it was, you were playing with somebody else or
Hmm.
somebody else was involved. Everything from physical games, board games and all that kind of stuff, to video games. Naturally, we usually talk about video games. So, I want to talk a little bit about how this progressed and changed because I believe that gaming has always been a social network. And today, what we call social networks, it still applies. So, let's hop back to original gaming consoles making it into the home. From what I recall, whether it's like Atari, the Nintendo, PlayStation 1, whatever system you started with, um, they came with multiple controllers. They don't anymore, which is like total not great.
Hey,
It's bullshit.
the Switch does.
Switch does now.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying. I mean,
Okay.
they're the weirdest little
Yeah,
controllers,
that's
but
kind of cheating because it's almost like the same controller split into two. But
I
yes,
mean, they still do it though.
yes, that's
Got
a
to get
good point.
props where it's at. But yeah, PlayStation, Xbox,
I
no.
think most of them now are limited to two, and then after that, it just becomes a random game that might have it. But I think most are just at most duo
Yes.
at
In
best.
fact, to your point, most consoles don't have more than two plug-in ports.
Hmm.
It's just not physically possible to play locally with multiple people. But so we're kind of back where we started, where it was generally two controllers. It moved on to the era of N64, which was also the 3D era, and then you had four controllers, and it was like, whoa. You'd invite your friends over. Thankfully, my brother and I were brothers, so it was really convenient when you play with either an only child or another set of siblings. All of you could play, whether it was Mario Kart or otherwise. During that same era, I think we had Game Boys. And Game Boy, we kind of touched on in a completely different topic last time, but it was a little handheld system, roughly the height of a cell phone. But you definitely played it single player, right?
Hmm.
However, they had connection
Crystal's
ports.
holding one up.
Yeah, it's they had connection ports that
Yep.
you could physically link from one to another. Uh, Also, in that era, for all the PC Master Race people, StarCraft and like esports were starting to spool up, and a lot of those people had what they called LAN parties or local area network parties. Eventually, the consoles will get there too. Man, I am really nerding out about this. But the idea is, even with severe technological limitations, multiplayer was a huge thing. And the social dynamic thing was there because the internet was barely around, and
Yeah.
it certainly wasn't used for social media as we know it today. However, they had all of these ways to connect and play with other people, even in the era where communication and long distance wireless technology was non-existent, right? Even with all of those limitations, multiplayer was huge and expected by the consumer, to the
Hmm.
point where even Game Boys, which are handheld personal devices, had physical ways to connect with other players, whether it was playing Pokemon and trading Pokemon or battling them, whatever it was. So skip forward a couple generations when you really get into the console war era between PlayStation and Xbox, especially. You started getting back into the 2-player local controls, but more of the online gaming started to come to the rise. MMO gaming started to rise up, and you got things like Ventrilo. I forget the other major chat platforms, but they were all things that existed prior to Discord. Discord is the gaming chat platform now, but it didn't exist, right? So it had little precursors before it. But the point in case here is even during the MMO era, everyone needed and wanted ways to communicate verbally and form social networks, clans, guilds, whatever you call them, FCs for Final Fantasy. And so the idea of community and social interaction was basically built into all of the major money-making games. World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, those really hit off the MMO era. I think early 2000s, maybe late 90s, somewhere in that range. Fast forward to basically modern day. Cell phones, wireless technology, all this streaming services, and of course, social media has come to the forefront. And now we have games that basically act the exact same way as social medias, to the point where TipTap, hold on, I wrote it down. Tapjoy, which if you know what it is, you know what it is, did a survey where most of their users would sacrifice a social media or all social media accounts to keep their favorite mobile games if they were forced to choose. Right?
The nerds have taken over.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Gaming cafes in China, which is a whole podcast topic, like so crazy what they've got going on, came to the rise. And I'm going to get off topic here. So I'm going to kind of stop myself short and say the whole progression I described with the different technology, every step of the way, social interaction was a massive, if not one of the leading causes for success of all games, even the Halo era. Halo was amazing.
That I think opened the door as far as, just to like segue into it.
Yeah.
I think Halo opened the door for Microsoft and Xbox to kind of direct their console towards it being an entertainment system over, hey, like straight up gaming system.
Yeah.
And in doing that, they kind of went towards, I think they initially tried to take it over as in being like back when there were still DVD players, Blu-ray players, and that was kind of the struggle that they were trying to combat PlayStation on. But by making an entertainment thing, they just kind of indirectly forced it to go towards social and it being a better, I'm saying it from my perspective as an Xbox person, not that it's overall better on every front, but like their party system in enabling it to have multiple people being able to talk, well, even if they're not playing the same game.
Yeah.
Because that was always a struggle, is that if you had multiple people playing different things, that was the only time that you could talk to them was in that game.
You should probably highlight, sorry to interrupt, but I realize some listeners may not have the same history as we do. It is really important to note that gaming systems did not always have built-in chat.
Yeah.
And so what Joe's describing here was a huge shift in the paradigm where there was no party chat. That was not a thing until Xbox took the reins there.
And that's what I was saying, is that it was pushing it towards that, because there was games prior to the whole social aspect, because I wanted to bring up Battlefield, where they had parties of over 60 people in the game. And I remember playing it on the computer and being mind blown that there were 60 other human beings in the game. Because for the longest time, if there was other people, there could be like 100, but half or more of that was NPCs.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were actually competing or playing with other people, but to have 60 or more people, actual people in a game, was crazy. And then to be able to talk to them was the struggle, because not a lot of people could play and then type at the same time. There were people that could do it and do it really, really fast, and sometimes like scary fast, because they would send a message right before something cut off and you're like, how did they even get that in there? And I just remember sometimes seeing something, and then you would go try to like type something back, and then the screen would change, and you're like, no. You wanted to make some like snarky reply, but you could barely get like the first like 3 words typed in. You're like, but again, it went from you talk to somebody sitting next to them to you started communicating with people from not just your local area, and it started to branch out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it started to take over for the idea of social networking, because back in the day, it was, even to go back further than Facebook, MySpace was the original, like, hey, I'm going to attach to make new friends and look for new people and grow my network from there. When you play games now, just in general, competing because you're playing in open lobbies and things like that, you run into people from all over.
Yeah. You touched on a lot of things, and it's like hard to choose which piece I want to talk about. I have stories about every little piece. Something I find beautifully ironic is that what we know as gaming and how we interact and all this stuff comes from the isolationism where gamers wanted the comfort of like being alone in their room and gaming. But in doing so, they got exposed to people from across the globe.
Yeah.
And there's something beautifully ironic about that, and how you form. Like, I met people from countries I had never even heard of, with accents that were completely foreign to me, and I got to learn a lot about the world at large just because I was playing a video game and I needed to communicate with my clanmates, and running around with. I played a lot of Asian MMOs and PvP style games in college. And it was just insane. Asia, first of all, is always the first to go knees deep into anything gaming or like tech. And I was stunned to see that we were coordinating our clan wars with like 300 people 3 times a day all across the world. And we were competing with 2 other factions in this particular game of also 300 and 300. So you had 1,000 people fighting live with people with messages going up on the screen and it was literally like armies with real people playing via video game trying to kill each other by the hundreds. It was just absolutely mind-boggling to me at the time. It still kind of is. Battlefield is known for having 60 players or whatever, and the Asians were like, rookie numbers, man. we do the thousands. I'll stop there. Crystal
made a point when we were talking off air, just in general conversation about this topic, on how having different servers kind of help narrow things in. Did you want to touch on that one?
Yeah. So, the games that I was specifically talking about with that was that I noticed with, if you will.
Volume.
Okay.
It's really loud. Sorry.
We're having some issues with our mics for whatever reason. Speaking of networks, I think they're just kind of randomly spiking. Yeah, so if you guys notice,
it's Riverside specifically. I'm not really sure.
Could be.
But anyways, so one of the games that I noticed that I played was Apex Legends. And Apex Legends, I noticed that when you're like selecting your server, it gives you places that are near you. So oftentimes what ends up happening is that the people that you're playing with live within a couple states of you. So you're making friends with people that could be in the same state, city, or town as you, instead of people across the world. Now you could change your server to other areas and so on and so forth. But it's cool because, like, I noticed you had made friends with people that you ended up linking up with and stuff like that via those games. And, I'm a not social person, so I don't socialize in games unless my husband does first. But the option is there, and it really does close it in more. Now, I did want to touch on a couple of things that you guys talked about as well. So I brought up a bunch of information here as you guys were talking. first of all, I did not realize that Discord came out in 2015.
It's
Now,
been around.
I
Is that
know
supposed to be young or old for you?
that to me, for technology, that's young, because gaming has been around significantly longer. I mean, party chats. We'll go to party chats next, right? So Sega Dreamcast had party chat in 1999. PlayStation 2 had it in 2001, and then Xbox 2008. Like, they were late. But
They
like,
were late, but they were more
Advertising
advanced.
was a big thing, but
yeah, but like, it's crazy that 2015 for Discord, and Discord became the main source of communication with gamers, like you were saying. I mean, I've streamed with other people, and they don't ask me like for my in-game chat. They ask me for my Discord. That's all they care about. So it's almost expected of gamers to have Discord. If you don't have Discord, are you really a gamer?
I was one of those late, like, to the game when it came to Discord, because I think it was just the original setup of it kind of seemed kind of like, why would I get this? Like, it's a third party thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started playing with people on other systems, that's how I was kind of like old man pushed into it, because I don't need it. And then they're like, you need to get it. I'm like, I'll be fine. And then the internet catches up and you're like, okay, I need it.
Well, thankfully, too, and I don't think this is that old either, right? Discord finally came to PlayStation. And I think this was like a couple
Came out on
years
Xbox
ago.
first.
Yes, it did. It did. Expected, because it's I think a program for the computer, so it should.
Yeah.
But like, the fact that now I can talk to my friends on Xbox and PC is really, really nice.
Even on the phone.
I actually have some stats from Discord that you guys might find interesting. So it is hard to argue that Discord and gaming in general are not social networks. Here are some statements, and this is old information, like a couple of years old from what I recall. Discord has 1.5 billion hours per month. 1.5 billion hours per month.
At least 1 million of that is me, just saying.
Like, that is hard to fathom. People, you get into the whole like eat the rich conversations, and people are like, this is what 1 billion is, and it like shows you what your income is and how like you're basically a grain of sand in the universe. Like 1.5 billion hours per month of people chatting in Discord. And that was when that metric was taken, which is not from like I don't even think it's from this year. I think it's from 1 or 2 years ago. Something else interesting, speaking of numbers, Roblox. I don't play Roblox.
Yeah, it's got
79 million daily, 380 million monthly. And they also have all these party places and stuff. So you think about that. I don't play it. Most of the people I know don't play it. But 79 million people every single day play it. And they have a party. So they have birthdays, they have funerals, they have life events where they get together in Roblox and they celebrate or just hang out or whatever. It really reminds me of the older generation, like chat rooms.
Yeah.
And the like
the Yahoo chat rooms.
Right. You had like little avatars in some of them too. It's kind of like that before.
It looks like it too when you're in it. And I've seen, because my kids play it on different levels of it. And then they have a younger brother that's very into it. And again, just being a parent, you kind of keep an eye on what they're doing. Because it's had certain run-ins that bad things have gotten in. They've gotten better at correcting it. But as far as a social thing, it's insane how like far it goes.
That's actually something I wanted to talk on or make a note of, is that a lot of these socialing things come with negative sides. Very dangerous sides, right? Not just for kids, but like sometimes I want to log into a game and then I get cussed out because I'm trash, you know? And that really affects your mental after a long time. And I appreciate that a lot of these gaming companies and programs and stuff like that are coming up with more and more ways to protect their users.
Mhm.
Something small that I want to note on is a game that I've recently played, Marvel Rivals. You could just outright mute everybody. Like, you don't
Yeah.
even have to have the chat available. You don't have to see the text. You don't have to hear the voices, none of it. Um, and I like that because, it's just such a toxic world we live in. People feel the need to be mean all the time. And some people even choose to be, predators in some shape or form towards kids. So we could set up things for our kids to not have to worry about, more of those things. And I'm going to let you talk on that more, Joe, because I don't have kids. So,
Yeah, I mean, they have parental controls that you can kind of block a certain level or rating of games. But again, there's always that open back door that people kind of sneak in, and you always have to watch it. And again, that's part of being a parent. You have to have the due diligence and kind of ask, like, what are you doing? And I think that's one advantage for me where I play games enough that I've either heard it in passing or I've seen it in like the shop and I kind of know what's around. So when I hear about it, I'm like, I've heard of it. And again, having my ear to the ground as far as gaming, I kind of see articles here and there, and I'll ask my kids, like, "Hey, have you heard of this? Or have you heard of that?"
It's thunder.
And then I kind of adjust based on that, and depending on the rating or the age of whichever one of my children is playing something, I can go, okay, well, they're old enough to kind of know what they're doing. Even if they think they're old enough, I double check and be like, "Hey, don't mention this and don't mention that." Kind of the same as our generation when we had the AOL chats.
Yeah.
You didn't give your address, you didn't give the exact like city location, certain things like that. Like, I mean, people would kind of like talk and say like, "Oh, I'm from this area," but you didn't give your pinpoint. And that's kind of how I've caught on and playing with other people. It was like, "Oh, you mentioned such and such restaurant," and I know that's local to my area, and I go, "Hey." After playing for a good amount of time with certain people, that's when you kind of go, do you happen to be from this area? And again, you don't pinpoint where they're at. And they go, yeah. So you realize how close you actually are. And that's how I've made in real life friends by just playing with people for a certain amount of time. And then in conversation going, I know that spot. And you go from there in a safe way.
Yeah. Social media currently, I think, is in an odd place. And I think gaming has always been social, as I mentioned. But I think it's starting to overtake the famous social medias in terms of what they're intended to do.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, tremendous amount of users, right?
yeah.
Instagram, tremendous amount of users. But how many of them are connecting, right?
Instagram, I feel like nobody.
Right.
That's a super,
Right. And so
yeah,
Facebook,
niche.
for most people, a lot of the younger generation won't even have Facebook. Even the older generations, like, I don't need it, like, it's dead. It's just all you see is ads, or just random stuff. It's practically dead
Yeah.
compared to its heyday where you legitimately interacted. And then, what else is there where people actually communicate? WhatsApp, but that's an anonymity. So that's out. Uh, you have like things like Omegle, which is random encounters, but they're one-offs, right? Gaming, I feel like, is one of the few communities that's social by nature, that is active and alive and prospering social connection routinely and in meaningful ways. Because first of all, you don't have to figure out, do I like the things this person likes?
You
You're
do.
doing the thing you both
Yeah.
like already, right? So that's out of the way. And then there's the whole notion of communication, right? As long as you're someone that communicates in gaming or is able to hear and receive messages, communication gates are open, that's fine. So, like, what does networking? I think that's really the key. We talk about social media, and that is a distinct topic from social networks and social networking. And I would argue that right now, games do more social networking and establish more meaningful social networks than social media, all of social media, including Facebook. And I'll give empirical evidence from my own life. I've landed 2 jobs and made more lifetime friends from gaming than I have outside of gaming since becoming an adult.
Yeah, I can concur to that and second it. Outside of people that I've had long-term relationship with over, I'd say 20 plus years, the numbers are heavy on the side of gaming compared to just general day-to-day life.
Right.
Because I think most interactions when you become an adult, especially a working adult, is just you have work acquaintances. But out of those, say 20 work acquaintances, you maybe gain one true long-term friend, meaning like 5-10 years plus.
Right.
Because again, you work a job in your early 20s, you meet all types of people. But do you necessarily share the same interest? Not really. Gaming, and I think gaming's advantage is you kind of get a judge of the type of personality somebody truly has compared to them at work.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the level, I wanted to mention this, the level of investment is so third party that people are going to give you life advice or help you because that's legitimately like what they feel like doing and their real raw opinion. Because I don't care, right? You live in wherever, not where I live. I'm just going to call it as it is, man. You're asking advice. Here's the advice. When you do that at work or with people you actually physically know or knew through, I don't know, church, work, whatever, locally, there's always that barrier of, oh, like I know this person or I know this person's people, right? There's some sort of network conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with games, it's like, dude, I only talk to you because I like you. And if I don't like you, we wouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that raw. Yeah, it's filtered because everyone filters when they interact socially, but way less filtered, way less fake interactions that you have. It's kind of harsh sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have other stats and things that are interesting that kind of change the topic a bit significantly. So I don't want to cut off any ideas you guys have on those notes.
Actually, I do want to point out we are basically out of time.
Perfect. All
Yeah,
right.
we can call it on that one.
We'll leave it at
So-
the low.
All right, so thank you for joining us for another episode of Gaming at the Round Table, brought to you by Owl Knights Media. I got it right that time. With Maverick, I'm pointing in different directions because of my screen.
See, he
Maverick,
messed it
Crystal,
up
and
anyway.
myself, Jojo. You messed me up. I didn't mess it up. Have a good day, everybody.
Stop the record. Oh, it's me.
Yep.